Hey everybody, welcome back to Soul School. Salute to the one and only George Duke. And this is a rather tricky show to do because George Duke's career encompasses so many different directions. I mean, just so many different directions. If you start talking about him as an arranger and just as a player, you know, gigging with Al Jarreau in San Francisco way back in the 60s, and just other different stuff like with Frank Zappa, like The Great Wazoo, a few other different albums. Actually, it was a lot of Frank Zappa albums that he actually did, and a lot of you guys probably don't know nothing about, but the Mothers of Invention, and kind of coming down the same lane as a lot of the different alternative stuff like that Parliament would kind of be known for a little bit later on in their career. But George Duke was kind of doing that thing. He was doing the jazz thing. Then when you start talking about him as a producer, you know, of course, Jeffrey Osborne, Never Need No Light to See Through You. Philip Bailey's I Know, which was the first solo project that he did that was away from Earth, Wind, and Fire. I think it was around like 82 or 83, something like that. Start to have solo success probably, I would say probably like around like 75, 76, you know, around that time period. And for me, I was into the funk, so, you know, automatically I'm thinking about Reach For It and Dookie Stick and, you know, Master of the Game. But even some of the other stuff that he would produce, like on the Blackbirds, the Better Days LP, which a lot of you guys are not up on. I mean, George has just done so much. I can kind of flip-flop, and it's kind of hard for me to stay in a particular lane because that cat has done so much. The musical director for the Soul Train Music Awards. I mean, this dude has just done an incredible amount of work. As I start to kind of like think about it, it's just actually kind of rather mind-blowing. You know, probably, I would say probably from my own common knowledge, I would say probably about 20 albums that I know about, probably way more than that. And of course, later on, he would start working with a lot of the 90s and 2000 artists and stuff like that. But whether it's jazz, whether it's funk, whether it's the Latin Afro-Cuban thing, because even like what Earth, Wind, and Fire was doing, George Duke was doing a lot of that stuff. Like, you know, he would go over to Brazil and just, you know, Milton Nascimento, just different people. He was like listening to much like Maurice White and just other different people. And this cat has done so much that it's just really, really kind of hard to shape into words. And even, I just thought about it, he worked on Michael Jackson's Off the Wall LP, the actual title track from the LP. Now, the interesting thing, it's kind of rather difficult to kind of distinct his playing on that album because of Greg Fillinganes, and I think Michael Boddicker did some work on the title track as well. But I know George did some synth programming as well as playing on the actual title track. But like I say, his style is easy to distinct, but when you got players like that, or like a Nat Kendrick who plays with Cameo, they're kind of hard to distinct when you start putting chart music in front of their faces because they basically can play anything. And even like somebody like Greg Fillinganes, you can sit him down and he can kind of play kind of the same stuff that George Duke does, even though he's a different guy. And, you know, prime example, Greg Fillinganes played, you know, the Fender Rhodes electric piano, Isn't She Lovely? You would think that it's Stevie Wonder, but it's actually Greg Fillinganes. So when I start trying to distinct the difference in styles on the Off the Wall track, I can't really tell really who is who, but I knew that George Duke did actually play on that track. And just, you know, as a balladeer, I mean, he got just different cuts like Sunrise, which is on the Follow the Rainbow LP. He has Starting Again, which is on the Don't Let Go LP, which you guys all pretty much, when you think of Don't Let Go, you think about Dookie Stick because it was such a classic. But, you know, for me, Starting Again is my favorite track on that LP. Then, of course, you have the Dream On LP, which is like an absolute masterpiece. Of course, You is on there, Someday, Positive Energy, Son of Reach For It is on there, Shine On, which they did Soul Train for back in the day. I mean, George Duke has really, really encompassed and has really done a lot. Played on Diane Reeves. I think the first Blue Note LP, I think it was simply entitled Diane Reeves, and actually Diane Reeves is his cousin. But as I'm sitting up here thinking, I think Better Days was on that LP. But George is just completely all over the place, and I could really lose myself. And if I lose myself, I'm definitely going to lose you guys. So real quick, let's get to some more entertainment from the master of the game, George Duke, and I'll be back in a few moments.
Now Now it's straight. Now watch what I'm going to do with the bass line. Which is more similar to what they do down there. Okay? I'm not playing any tune. But, you know, that's sort of an accented one. And sometimes, now, I know one Brazilian drummer, I can't think of his name, he works with Milton Nascimento, that loves to do stuff like, it's sort of a delayed one. It's really weird. It's like, and he plays like that. But everybody does. It's like, bang. Come with me, baby. We're going south of the border. Where the water runs the other way.
George Duke, and when you start thinking about losing a great like George Duke, it's much like what I was talking about, like with Marvin Jr., or you just lose just different. It's like losing Quincy, because everything basically Quincy can do, George Duke can do as well, as far as arranging, conducting. Quincy may be a little bit different in his ability to get the right people on the session in reference to getting everybody together, but I really believe that George Duke actually has those same kind of vibes and same kind of thought process or whatever, but he's just all over the place, so you can't really just necessarily narrow him down into any particular kind of music, because like I say, he's Latin, he's Afro-Cuban, he's funk, he's jazz, he's R&B, he's a balladeer, he's a great writer, he's a great arranger. George Duke is really, much like one of the titles of his LP, he's really what we call a master of the game, and he's a cat that we're actually really, really going to miss. Like I say, don't take my word for it. Just go and just really, really kind of just Yahoo and just really kind of start to look at his career, because there's a lot of stuff that I'm actually missing. But this cat is really what we call a master of the game. And you start thinking about that time period in which he was coming. It was right after like the Donald Byrd stuff, Billy Higgins and just different people like that. And it was right before, Ronnie Laws. He would kind of be like around the time that, I guess, right after Hubert Laws and George Benson and all of them kind of start to happen, when all that CTI stuff was actually happening. But he, like I say, with Frank Zappa, his own solo stuff, of course the band that he would later have, and Byron Miller, Ndugu Chancler, Sheila E, Napoleon Brock, who also was with Frank Zappa, Josie James, great vocalist. George Duke has worked with the best. He has arranged the best. He has wrote for the best. He has wrote some of the best material that's ever actually been recorded. And he's just one of the baddest cats who has ever lived. And like I said, I don't want to belabor the point. Let's get to more music, more fun with George Duke.